So if you're interested in using public domain content, in this video, I just want to share some tips that are going to help you use it a little bit easier and get the most out of it. So we'll take a look at 5 tips for using public domain resources. First of all, keep in mind not everything is public domain. Some people believe that anything on the internet is a public domain. Not quite the case. People do post and share copyrighted information all the time, and it's your responsibility to confirm its public domain status. So if you're seeing something that's marked as public domain, but it's maybe from a current movie or TV show, it's probably not in public domain. So you just need to keep in mind and educate yourself about public domain and know more likely what would be in public domain and wouldn't be in public domain. So for example, for the most part, works published before 1923 in the United States are in public domain. And people who've released things of public domain after that, that's public domain. A lot of government content is public domain. So you just want to have a working knowledge of this so you can take advantage of the content. So your first step is going to be verifying the public domain status of the content. Most content that is in the public domain will be labeled as such, although as I said, sometimes people will label things. However, if you're going to more academic types of databases or content, such as government sites, things like the Library of Congress, they will often have that available as a search, or it'll show in the attribution. So you just want to dig a little bit deeper and make sure that it is public domain. If you're curious about something specific, particularly written content, you can go to copyright.gov and take a look at the records there, for example. Another tip is that Creative Commons is not necessarily public domain, but there is content in Creative Commons that you can use like public domain. So Creative Commons is an organization that licenses content for use, and there's a lot of different licenses. So creators can have works requiring attribution or only allowing use in non-commercial projects. So if you're interested in visual content, they do have a free search engine. Let me show you here. So this is search.creativecommons.org. This is fantastic, and it's mostly image-based, so you're not going to find a lot of written things here. But what you can do if you are searching is they have another box that'll come up here on the side, but they connect in with all these different places, and you would just select something like use commercially and modify and adapt, and make sure you do that before you actually go ahead and select what you're looking for. So let's say you're looking for maybe battleship. You want to look at some battleship images for something. And then that'll come up here. And then you can also see these two here are also like public domain free to use licenses as well. So then you can go through here and take a look at some of this content and then see like this is a battleship game. So that's an interesting example because that picture of the battleship game may be public domain, but the actual battleship game, which has been around for a long time, may still though be under copyright. So things like that, like pictures of commercial things like that, you might have to be a little bit more careful of. But this is a great resource for finding tons and tons of public domain content. You just need to make sure that you pick the right thing and keep in mind that Creative Commons isn't always all public domain content. So keep in mind with public domain content, you cannot copyright it unless you alter it pretty substantially. So the underlying work is always going to be public domain, and you can copyright additions or changes, but you can't actually take public domain and say, I own this. That's why it's in public domain. And it's always good if you can to make it unique. It really does depend on what you're doing and where you're going with public domain. Some things you can just pull and take as is, but if you are trying to put content out there, it's sometimes easier and you'll get more people interested if you make it unique. So for example, Pride and Prejudice with zombies is an example of public domain content that stands out in a crowded marketplace by being unique. And the way, this is actually a book and then they made it into a movie, but the way the book works is they actually take Pride and Prejudice and break it up, and then they put sections of their own content in between little sections of Pride and Prejudice. So it's kind of a fun way to take advantage of a classic. So if you'd like to learn more about public domain and get access to tons of public domain resources, I do recommend my PD Goldmine training. It is a fantastic in-depth training with a huge database of public domain content.